Hey guys, and welcome to the second installment of Monday Rants. Well, today I'm going to rant about somebody who, honestly, I personally don't like. I literally call him the cancer of professional wrestling. We are talking about one Vincent James Russo. Yeah, Vince Russo. Honestly, I never liked him. Some of the stuff that he pulled in every promotion, he worked in. Mainly WWE, WCW, he also worked in TNA. Currently, he's involved with Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Which, spoiler alert, next week's rant. But I honestly can't stand Russo. And, we're just going to go over some of the stuff that he's done. So, ultimately, first and foremost, in '97, Russo became the head writer for WWF and wrote its flagship show, Raw is War, as well as its monthly pay-per-views with the angles he created. Now, mind you, all this is coming from his Wikipedia. Russo had a big part in putting WWF ahead of WCW in the Monday Night War rating during the Attitude Era. Okay, so that's probably the one good thing he did do, was he brought in the Attitude Era. But to the same extent, I still say he stole everything from the Attitude Era from ECW, from Extreme Championship Wrestling. So right there, to me, it's almost like he didn't have a creative bone in his body, in a sense. He stole everything from ECW. Now, okay, yes, you can say, well, ECW took everything from Japan. And you know what? That could possibly be true. Because, a lot of ECW stuff did come from Japan. Especially stuff with, like, FMW and Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling from Atsushi Onita. But, they never tried to pass it off as their own. Which is something that, Russo ultimately tried to do. It also says in here, at the King of the Ring pay-per-view in 1998, Ed Ferreira joined the WWF creative team and was paired with Russo. Some of the more controversial characters during this time often created by Russo's critics include Sable, Val Venus, and The Godfather. Okay, you know what? That is true, but those were also at the time, I will admit, staples of the Attitude Era. It was pushing the envelope, everything like that. So I will give him credit. Now remember, even in these rants, I will give credit where credit is due. Now here's the downfall. Russo devised the Brawl for All tournament. Oh my god, what a clusterfuck. Now, I still say Brawl for All was a good concept at the time. MMA was something that was starting to become really big, and I think if they would have done it differently than like a boxing kind of event, a Brawl for All really could have worked. But alas, they didn't, and they made it more boxing than an MMA kind of idea. And, that's the downfall. I'll probably do a rant about the Brawl for All somewhere down the line. Now, another good thing is he did contribute to the formation of DX, Kane and The Undertaker feud, Stone Cold versus Vince. Also had the rise of The Rock and Foley's Three Faces push. Okay, that is some good stuff. So there was, like I said, there is some good in some of these things that I'm going to rant about. Not all the time. So now we go to Vince going to WCW from 99 to 2000. So not a short-lived time in WCW. So Russo and Ferrero signed with WCW in October 3rd of 99. Russo contested that his reason for leaving WWF was a dispute with Vince McMahon over the increased workload caused by the introduction of the new SmackDown broadcast and McMahon's disregard of Russo's family. I could see that. It's Vince. In this case, McMahon. I don't mean him. Now again, another good thing I can say is while Russo was with WCW, he did bring in guys like Jushin Thunder Liger, Juventud Guerrera, stuff like that. But now here's the thing. January of 2000. A walkout and return. In January 2000, Russo received 2 phone calls. One from Bret Hart, then WCW World Heavyweight Champion, and one from Jeff Jarrett, then WCW US Heavyweight Champion. Both saying they were injured, could not wrestle, and had to vacate their championships. This required Russo to alter his plans for Hart and the New World Order. Russo and his booking committee sat down to determine what would now happen at Sold Out. One of the ideas included putting the now vacant WCW title on shoot fighter Tank Abbott. There we go. Okay. There's another person who I'll probably, if you will, shoot about in these rants, and that's Tank Abbott. He wasn't much of a fighter in the UFC. He did not belong in the octagon. He did not belong in a professional wrestling ring. He should not have had any belt put on him at all. Even the notion of putting a belt on him. So in an attempt to do something believable, the idea was originally to have a Rumble match in which Sid Vicious would be an early entrant in the match and would last all the way to the end. When Abbott would come out to the match and eliminate him with one punch, Russo said that Abbott might not have held the belt for more than 24 hours if this title change had actually occurred. But the day after he and his committee came up with the idea, he was asked to work in a committee and no longer be head writer. Russo declined the offer and he left the company. So there we go. In a way, he was thinking of himself. Whatever. Now here's another person who I'm going to shoot on later, and that's Kevin Sullivan. Another person I cannot stand. So ultimately, they chose Chris Benoit to win the title from Vicious in a singles bout with Arn Anderson as the referee. So Sullivan was relieved of his duties in March 2000, and Russo returned as lead writer alongside the returning Eric Bischoff. The idea was that Russo and Bischoff would reboot WCW into a more modern, streamlined company that would allow younger talent to work with established stars. Great concept, but unfortunately WCW couldn't make it work. If they could, WCW would still be in business today. Another notable storyline that they did was the New Blood versus the Millionaires Club. He had a feud with Ric Flair, in which he and David Flair shaved Ric's hair and Reed's hair. His feud with Goldberg and his short reign as world champion. God, I remember that, when he put the belt on himself. Oh my God. And then he booked Miss Elizabeth, who has never been a wrestler at all. She was never trained as a wrestler. She was a valet. She was the wife of a wrestler, girlfriend of a wrestler. Because yes, later on she was with Flexi Lexi, Lex Luger. But they gave her a match against Daphne. Elizabeth left the company short after. I can't say I blame her. Now we have the Bash at the Beach 2000 incident. At Bash at the Beach 2000, Russo was involved in an incident with Hogan, where Hogan was booked to lose a match against reigning WCW World Heavyweight Champion Jeff Jarrett. Hogan refused to lose the match, invoking his contract's creative control clause to override Russo. Due to Russo's apparent lack of direction for Hogan's character following the planned loss, in the end, Russo booked Jarrett to literally lie down for Hogan, which resulted in Hogan doing a worked shoot on Russo, saying, "That's why this company is in the damn shape it's in, because of bullshit like this," and scoring the pinfall victory by placing his foot on Jarrett's chest. Yeah, I remember that. That right there was the stupidest thing ever. Okay? Russo came out later in the broadcast to nullify the match's results as he publicly fired Hogan. This action restored the title to Jarrett, which set up a new title match between Jarrett and Booker T, with Booker T winning the title. As Russo promised, Hogan never resurfaced in WCW and even sued Russo for defamation. The suit was dismissed in 2003 as groundless. Honestly, there was. This was supposed to be a work, and, So now, again, we get into World Heavyweight Champion injury and departure. In mid-2000, Russo entered into an angle with Ric Flair. The angle notably included Russo sending cops to the ring to arrest Flair during the wedding of Stacy Keibler and Flair's son, David. In August 2000, at New Blood Rising, Russo entered into a feud with Goldberg after confronting Goldberg when the wrestler left the match and refused to follow the script. The next pay-per-view, Fall Brawl, saw Russo interfere in Goldberg's match against Scott Steiner, costing Goldberg the match. Again, just typical Russo, typical his crap writing. Yeah. On September 18th, 2000, episode of Nitro, Russo was in a tag team match alongside Sting and Booker T versus Scott Steiner and Jeff Jarrett, with the wrestler getting the pin, receiving a shot at Booker T's WCW Heavyweight Championship. Russo won, after Booker T dragged an unconscious Russo onto Steiner for the 3 count. The following week, Russo faced Booker T in a steel cage match for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. The match did not appear to have a clear winner, as Russo was speared by Goldberg through the side of the cage. At the same time, Booker T exited the cage. 2 days later on Thunder, Russo was announced as the winner and new champion. So yeah, as I said before, he literally put the belt on himself. Thank God, when WCW was bought out in May of 2001, Russo was gone. He then came back to WWE. In 2002. So, he did bring guys in. He brought in Goldberg, Steiner, Bischoff, Hart again. After feeling disrespected during a phone call with Stephanie McMahon, Russo then left on his own accord. And now he goes to TNA from 2002 to 14. And honestly, again, just just some of it, okay. It even says here, in 2002, Russo joined Jeff and Jerry Jarrett's NWA TNA promotion as creative writer and would assist in the writing and production of the show. Russo claims that the name Total Nonstop Action came from him, and that the original concept was, as they were exclusive to pay-per-view, to be an edgier product than WWE. The initials of the company, TNA, being a play on T and A, shorts for tits and ass. Throughout the first few years, there were numerous reports of creator power struggle over the direction of the programming. Again, I could always see that because it's Russo. He literally has his head up his own ass. So during the time these rumors were circulated, Russo eventually debuted as an on-screen character when the mysterious masked wrestler Mr. Wrestling 3, who, if I remember correctly, Mr. Wrestling 3 is actually Steve Corino, and helped Jarrett win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and was eventually unveiled as him, meaning Russo. They also created a faction he dubbed Sports Entertainment Extreme. Yeah, sex. Recruiting the likes of Glenn Gilberti, Sonny Sakai, B.G. James, or Road Dogg Jesse James, Raven, Trinity, and others. It was just crazy. I do remember those times, and it's... So let's see. On September 21st, 2006, TNA President Dixie Carter re-signed Russo as a writer on the TNA creative team. Russo was paired with Dirty Dutch Mantel and Jeff Jarrett on the TNA creative team. During the March 2007 TNA pay-per-view, Destination X, on the Last Rites match with Abyss and Sting, Fire Russo chants erupted from the crowd in the arena at Orlando, indicating the fans' frustrations with the incidents that occurred during the match. Yeah, I remember that match. Yeah. It was, again, I use this term a lot, but it's a clusterfuck. Another time the Fire Russo chants were heard was at the following month's pay-per-view Lockdown that was held in St. Louis on April 15th, 2007. The chants were heard during the electrified steel cage match with Team 3D and LAX, where the lights would flicker on and off whenever a wrestler touched the cage, giving the impression of electrocution. Again, now that is a match that has been done in Japan. I mean, one of the best matches for an electrified steel cage match. You know, it's here on YouTube. Go check it out. I'll put a link to it in the description. Hayabusa versus Atsushi Onita in FMW. And again, that's where it's like, I still say Russo took a lot of his stuff from ECW, which ultimately, yes, like I said before, you could argue they took their stuff from FMW in Japan. Especially with the, now as we know it, ultra-violence. But, I remember that feud with Team 3D and LAX, and okay, yes, an electrified steel cage match could have definitely worked, but you didn't need to do that whole thing with the lights flickering on and off. You could have easily done it another way. Again, you look at the way FMW handled it with Hayabusa and Onita. Even the way I've seen it done on the indies here in the U.S. I believe CZW did an electrified steel cage match. Or no, I'm sorry, it was IWA Mid-South. Did an electrified steel cage match. And actually, I believe it was a woman's steel cage match, if I remember correctly. I think it might have been the first Queen of the Death matches, or it might have also been the second one in the finals when it was Mickey Knuckles and LuFisto. I have to go back and re-find out. But anyway, so it was just crazy. Dixie Carter has since noted the gimmick was created by writer Dutch Mantel. However, in 2011 interview, Dirty Dutch denied this, and the two proceeded to argue over Twitter for several months after this. Russo became head writer of creative for TNA sometime during July 2009. On addressing the Fire Russo chants, Russo said he was not head of creative during that time. And when the idea of the electrified steel cage match was presented to him, he said that there was no way that the concept could have been done in a believable manner. Bull. Again, go look at the IWA Queen of the Death match. You know, the IWA Mid-South Queen of the Death matches final that had it. Go look at the way it was done in FMW in Japan. It can be done in a believable manner. So, now we fast forward. He left TNA just to come back. In April 14, the PWI Insider website claimed that Russo was working as a consultant for TNA Wrestling. Russo denied the reports, but on July 15th, PWI Insider reported that Russo had accidentally sent an email to them with instructions on how TNA's commentators work. Oh well, you flubbed up, Russo. So, okay, after all that, he's now officially done with TNA. And 2017, he goes to Aero Lucha. Basically for a year, 2 years, 2017 and 18. So on December 8th, 2017, Russo signed with the Nashville, Tennessee-based Aero Lucha promotion as a script consultant. On April 5th, 2018, Aero Lucha's CEO, Jason Brown, explained via a question and answer session on WeFunder, a crowdfunding website, that Russo had been hired as an independent contractor, not as an employee. As of April 2018, Russo is no longer with the promotion. Now we get here. Juggalo Championship Wrestling. On August 26, 2005, it was announced that Russo was an investor for Juggalo Championship Wrestling, an independent wrestling promotion owned by the Michigan-based hip-hop duo Insane Clown Posse. Now, honestly, yeah. Ever since he's been in JCW now, I've been watching Lunacy every week. And some of the stuff he's done, he's already made a pole match, which he's infamous for. He's already gotten rid of Violent J, which, okay, I know that storyline because Jay is still on the show. He's still doing stuff with the show. So, okay, I know that storyline. But then also, with that, he, instead of having Jay as the commissioner, he puts Vampiro in charge, being the showrunner, and then gives a female wrestler the showrunner position of the female division, the women's division, and lets her basically do whatever the hell she wants. Like, she's already done stuff where she's turned a regular match into what was supposed to into a 2-on-1 match, which then turned into a 3-on-1 match. She's done a match where a dog collar match where she did not have to wear the dog collar or be chained to the collar. She just recently did a match where it was a gauntlet match, and the stipulation when she came out was the wrestler Hollywood Haley J, who I personally like. I'm actually happy she's the JCW Women's Champion. She had to pin her, Big Al, Alice Crawley, for a 4 count, where Crawley, to win, had to pin Haley Hood for a 2 count. No. If you're going to do something like that, make it work a little better. It can work. I'm not saying it can't, but it's the way things are going. But honestly, like I said, I never liked Russo. I never liked his writing style. I never liked any of the stuff that he tried to put in. to professional wrestling, and I just honestly think he's very bad for professional wrestling. I mean, great, you want to do podcasts on wrestling? You want to talk about stuff like that? Great, by all means, do so, Russo. You know, I'll give you that. You know the business. But stay away from writing. Stay away from all that. But that's my 2 cents, to quote my friend Bunny. Well, that's going to be it for this Monday rant. Like I said, I gave you the spoiler. Next week, Juggalo Championship Wrestling, JCW. And again, some of these points are going to come back up. So, until next time, everybody. Peace.